Can be hard when you grow up. People fill you with doubt. You start thinking about what you're gonna do now. And it's do or die, gotta make it count. So lose your worries, let your problems go on until my whole body burns out. I ain't never gonna slow down. I ain't never gonna slow down.
Welcome everyone, this is Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about psychology, executive coaching, and how to find peace with everything that can be going on in your life. And life can be very busy. It can be very hectic. It can be daunting. It can be something that you don't want to pay attention to, because the moment you pay attention to, you might start to see all the problems. You're going to start to run away. You're going to say, well, maybe I'll do this later. But yet, today, this present moment that we have right now can be the best time for you to take action, because you might be waiting for the right time. Maybe there is a right time for something, but they always say the right time is the present moment, right now. Because if we can take action more readily, we can do more things typically. Just because we do more things, it doesn't necessarily mean that the things we do are going to bring us happiness. The things we do are going to give us peace, or the things that we do are going to bring us some type of fulfillment. There are many aspects to a person and what they can get, what they're going to be able to do in their life. But yet, we have to look at where we are going astray, where the yarn of our life or whatever we're trying to create is beginning to unravel, or is beginning to fray. Let's focus on those areas, give some attention, mend exactly what's going on, repair, and then we can grow. Similar to how muscles are. I know I talk about the gym sometimes. We expand and we contract. Our mind is very similar. Our life can be very similar too, where we grow. Maybe we find that nice spot and we kind of go into that ball, that comfort zone. It feels good. And we stay there and we feel stuck. Yet that stuck, maybe at one point it was comfort, but then at some point it becomes a battle for us to escape this area that we have given ourselves, an area that we thought we would be very happy in, that we would grow in, that we would prosper in. But this area is not our peace. So today we're going to be going on a journey to learn how we can start to come to peace. Because the mindset that we can get from this is going to be one that's going to help us grow to new heights in our life. And I'm going to be doing that today with my guest, Joanna Adler. Welcome, Joanna Adler, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Happy to be here.
So glad to have you on today. I have you on as a psychologist and executive coach, and I just love that mix because I know we're going to be having a great conversation. Because when we look at the mind can be tricky because it can be giving us limiting beliefs. It can be giving us more stress than we necessarily need. And we have to figure out a way to cope with that. And the work that you do is helping people realize their potential, reach it, get rid of stress and anxiety, and to find their spirit bond per se. I'm just going to name it that. But with your, like in your own words, tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help.
Okay, sure. Well, that's interesting introduction. So I am a clinical psychologist. I am also a depth hypnosis practitioner and a teacher at the Foundation of the Sacred Stream, as well as an executive coach. So I have multiple hats that I wear from multiple directions. But all of that synthesizes together, whether I'm working as an executive coach, working in a organization, in a educational setting, in a company, or whether I'm working with families or I'm working with individuals. I really do my best to come from the place of wanting the highest good for anyone that I'm speaking with and for all involved. So we're talking a bit here today about the coming to peace conflict resolution method, which is a conflict resolution class and methodology that I teach that's based in this book called Coming to Peace by Isa Gucciardi and Laura Chandler. The skills of understanding that come from psychology, that come out of executive coaching, that come out of spiritual practice really come together in this methodology to support people in feeling more whole and understanding what the roots of their conflicts are, both internally and externally, and giving them a path forward to a path that one can walk in order to resolve conflict. So that's the one of the main things I'm here to talk about today.
Okay, great. So the conflict and the peace is going to be something that I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions on, because peace can be I'm living in the forest by myself, and or maybe I have a cat or a dog and I'm very happy there. That's peaceful for me. Some people, they love to live in a small apartment in Brooklyn with a train right by their window, just rocking, like rattling everything. That could be peace for them. Peace is different for everyone. What is peace for you?
Oh, what an interesting question. Um, Peace for me is a state in which I feel calm, I feel spacious, I feel grounded, and I feel whole. And, I'm living in the mountains in Colorado now, and in part, you're talking about the relationship of one's place and one's state here. And so for me, one of the things that the high Rocky Mountains do is bring a state of groundedness and support and spaciousness that I really resonate with. I also believe that that state of calm spaciousness, which is something that is pointed to in Buddhist psychology, and Buddhist psychology is one of the roots of understanding that the Coming to Peace methodology is based in. We access that calm state through a particular kind of meditation called shamatha meditation in Buddhist practice. And that's generally a cultivation of a one-pointed awareness, right? Most commonly, it's with the breath, right? I'm just focusing on my breath in and my breath out, or I'm counting breaths, but I'm staying focused in a one-pointed way on a breath, on an image, right? There are multiple places that one can focus to create this calm state. So it's wonderful to have one's environment be something that is supportive to them in creating that calm, spacious peacefulness, that interior state of settledness, right? And you're right, some people, that noise of a train, that feels very settling, in part probably because it's familiar, right? But the good news is that we can cultivate that state wherever we are.
And that is where I wanted to go, because the peace can be wherever we are. Think of how meditation can be not only done in a yoga room on a mat or on a cushion. You can do walking meditation. You can do some meditation in your vehicle while you're driving to work. There's many methods for that to happen. However, sometimes people are so strict with the view of peace. Peace is going to be everything is perfect in my life. And when it's not peaceful, that's when the conflicts are going to start to happen, begin in their life and or in their mind. So now they're trying to figure out, well, if I'm not at peace, my life is not perfect or it's not going the way I want, let me try to figure out what is going to be the steps to get me to that place. Maybe just in my mind, because maybe their physical location is maybe not going to be peaceful. But if we can make the mind the peaceful place first, then no matter where they are, they can begin to step into that peace. So, what do you see when people are finally deciding to come to peace is the most difficult parts for them to accept?
Well, I think the path to creating peacefulness externally comes from creating peacefulness internally. So there is focus and contemplation and engagement in understanding what's happening in one's heart and one's mind and one's psyche that helps one begin to get their hands around where are the places that I am internally reactive, right? Where's my wounding, right? What are the places where I've had trauma? How do I begin to relate to those places in me in a way that is healing and holding and loving? The counseling model that I generally work out of and that the coming to peace methodology comes from is a spiritual counseling model. If someone coming into a session where they're working an inner coming to peace process, which means that we are identifying different parts, like if someone feels two ways about a situation, right? Talking to a client just yesterday who was saying, boy, I just feel like I don't want to speak to this other person ever again. But yet I'm really feel like I'm not resolved and there's some things I need to say, right? So he's feeling two ways about this other person, right? And when we've got an inner split, when we feel two ways about a situation, one of the things we can do is use this methodology of inner coming to peace to come into an inner focus where we can identify these two different parts of the self with the support of inner resourcing and be able to let them have a conversation and say what they need to say, so that one can internally find a direction forward where the needs of both of those parts are met. And so we use this methodology, this coming to peace methodology, both internally, right, in terms of working with the inner reactivity, the feelings that someone has, right? Someone might move through the world with some anxiety, right? That's based in some fear, for example, that they come by honestly because of their history, right? But that fear keeps them from being peaceful, right? You asked, how does one move towards this state of peacefulness? One has to move inside with curiosity and support to understand the places inside of them that are hurting so that they can resolve those, so that they can bring healing that's needed to those parts of the self. Sometimes it's in a conversation, so that they can feel settled in how they're moving forward. The same thing happens between groups, between individuals, and even between, within a larger group. These kind of processes can be really helpful.
It's so interesting because we talk about the idea of curiosity and to look at the areas in our life that need healing, or if they have been wounded, or if we have dealt with trauma, we should look at it in a way to work on it and heal from it. But yet, in our world today, especially here in the West, when we have an issue in our life, one of the things we do so readily is we tuck it away, we hide it away, we sweep it under the rug, maybe save it for a later date, right? We put it on our to-do list. Yet there has to be some priority in that curiosity. Do you find that people wait too long to decide to heal, or it's always the right moment for them to step into that healing?
Oh, the present moment is always a good time to step into healing and to allow yourself to be curious. Absolutely. I think you're right, Michael, that the pace of the world today in the West and in many other places in the world is so frantic, right? That people aren't taught to cultivate awareness of their inner experience. They just kind of keep going with the to-do list and all the things that got to get done, and all the distractions, right? All the distractions we have with media and phones and access to screens 24/7, and all of that it is, we get really caught up in that and miss out on this opportunity. I think, in Buddhism, they say that finding the Dharma, right, which is meaning having a connection with the philosophy, is like finding a needle in a haystack. It's like it's so rare that one actually finds a connection to something that can help them settle and access the resources they need to begin to create some healing for themselves, right? We hear that with people when people are in the dying process, you often hear them say with regret, my gosh, I wish I had paid more attention. I wish I had been more loving. I wish I had created more space for myself and for those around me. And I think that's a real lesson for us with the pace of society and the pace of things in the world today.
I just finished a book. It was The Top Regrets of the Dying or something similar to that. I would have to look to see the exact title and the author. But the book was interesting because it talked about how sometimes we lose the things that are closest to us in our heart, our friends, our family. We get so tied down with what we see in the moment. Sometimes it's our career, sometimes it could be our hobbies, it could be the things that don't necessarily bring us the most fulfillment. And I know in my work, what I do with mindset coaching and when I work with executives, one of the things they struggle with is fulfillment. They have maybe reached a great place in their life. Maybe money is no longer an issue. They can go on all the vacations in the world, but they don't feel fulfilled. Is fulfillment the same as peace? And if it is, how can those two create a harmony together?
Well, I mean, I'm curious what you think, but I would argue that fulfillment is an aspect of peace, or that it can be an aspect of peace. I think, that peace is available, period. And that's the good news, right? Is it easier to access when things are going well? Absolutely. Is it easier to access when we're feeling good about what we do in the world and how we contribute and how we're being of service and what we're growing, for working in an organization? If there's meaning and vision and passion, that's engaged, absolutely. Feeling like what you are offering in the world is of value tends to bring fulfillment. And fulfillment makes it easier to find peace, right?
No, I think you're spot on with that. It's so true because peace and fulfillment can be one and the same. Sometimes we can give it different definitions. Again, it's very similar to success. What is success for me might not be success for someone else. Success for me might be I want to have a mansion with 29 bedrooms and 15 baths because that's how many I need and that's how many I feel I need to be successful. When someone might say, well, as long as I have a 3-1 or a 3-2 and I could be with my loved ones, that's better for me. So society can definitely get in the way of what is peace or what is fulfillment, but we do have to do the work to choose that for ourselves. And this is where I want the conversation to go with you and I, because the work that you do is so powerful. And I wanted to go down the process of how you help people get rid of that angst that they're living in and come to peace. What are some of the first steps that you will walk through with a client? Is it just looking at their past, trying to figure out where the trauma is? Or is it maybe starting what type of goal they want in the beginning and then working toward that?
I'm pretty flexible when I start with clients in that, sometimes somebody is coming in, especially with a coaching situation, with an executive coaching situation, somebody's coming in with a goal often, right? Or sometimes it's the opposite, right? Sometimes somebody has been assigned a coach because they're not doing great. And then it's okay, so what do you think is going on that you're having a hard time, right? So then we have our work cut out for us to understand that and bring some support and wisdom to what is happening for them that they're getting in their own way, right? Other times I start with a history, right? If somebody doesn't have a super strong first agenda, I want to know the history. I want to know what their relationships were like in their early life, because those are the template for how we're relating at work or how we're relating at home now, right, as adults. And I want to understand any presenting problems that they have. Where do you feel successful in the world, and where do you feel like you struggle in the world? And I want to understand all of those things. And it's from gathering all that information that we begin to understand where someone's getting hijacked, if they're getting hijacked, right? So you said, how do you address angst, right? So one way to think of angst is that it is a feeling, often it has a fear base to it, that is based in experience. And often, I would say usually, when someone has a feeling like angst or fear or anxiety, or they've got a reaction to internal fear that they have, which can come in the form of anger, for example, or hatred, or some way, like generally we have states that are uncomfortable and then ways we try and cope with those states, right? And the coping can be sometimes more effective and sometimes less effective, right? So sometimes we get this layer cake of things. I've got my initial fear, then I got this way that I get angry with myself about fear, or I have this initial fear and I get angry with everybody else, right? Because that's how I'm trying to defend myself when I interpret that something is threatening to me, for example. We just need to begin to understand what that anatomy is for each person, where they're struggling, and how they're going through their life in terms of how they're coping with the places that they struggle, how that's affecting them. If I'm dealing with an executive with an anger problem, we've got some unraveling to do to understand what they're trying to do by being angry. Right? What are you trying to do by being blustery all the time? Right? I do a bunch of executive coaching in a Ivy League university, and I find that a lot of those people are doing a lot of chest butting. Like, I'm like, okay, what's the power game here? What are you trying to do here? What's the point, and how are you going about the point? And is that the most effective way to get where you're wanting to go? So, we unravel, we begin to work backwards to see how did we get here. And when we add this layer of ability to be able to use hypnotherapy or guided meditation, we can help someone focus their mind back to what may have been the original place that this feeling got started, right? Like, there's a lot of parents in the world that are really well-intentioned and doing the best they can. There's a lot of parents in the world that are not. But even with those parents that are, I have 2 grown kids now, even with those parents that have really tried hard, breaches happen. Things happen where a kid feels missed or unmet, and or much, much worse than that, right? Neglect, abuse, is rampant. We need to understand where somebody got off course from the place inside themselves where they hold positive intention, from which they're curious and from which they can be peaceful, right? That's kind of like what happens in life, is that we get knocked around and then we figure out how we're going to deal with how we've been knocked around, right? And then sometimes we get these kind of crystallized structures that may or may not be so helpful. So that's how I would begin to approach it.
And I love the aspect of when someone is going through those coping mechanisms, we do have to look at if it's good or bad, because some things can be good, some things can be bad. But oftentimes I have found that sometimes when they cope, it can be quite destructive for them, and it makes it harder for them to get out. It's almost like you're in a hole and you're doing these things, and it's just making it more difficult to get out. Think of the executive, as you were saying, right? Puffing out their chest, hoo, hoo, ha, and it's going around. And it makes it more difficult because now they're giving themselves that persona, that ego. And they feel like if they let that go or they become vulnerable, then people are going to walk all over them. So there's so many different aspects to coaching, and then a person realizing, is what they're doing helpful to them, to others? And at some point, we take on the world. We say, okay, the world requires me to do this, and I have to be this person. But yet, that person might not be in alignment to our true self. That person might not be in alignment to someone who's going to bring us peace. But yet, we feel obligated to be that person because we might have to be the mother, we might have to be the father, we might have to be the boss or the CEO, whatever, to make sure everything runs smoothly. We sacrifice our peace, and people are so readily sacrificing their peace today to be this persona that may or may not be true to themselves. How do you help people step away from that ego that they have? How do you help people step more into an aspect of growth and looking at the things that they do, whether they be good or bad, let them allow themselves growth and positivity?
There's two places I want to go with that question. One of which is whenever I'm working with an individual or a group, one of the first things that I will do is relatively soon in the process is that I will lead them on a guided meditation. And the guided meditation is a process of moving inside. And what we're doing as we do that is we are moving towards what we call the part of yourself that has your highest good as its sole intent. And that part of oneself can come in any sort of fashion. It could come as an animal or a plant or a light or a mythic being or human being or sound. It could come as anything. But when someone connects in with an experience internally of a part of themselves that is holding highest good as its sole intent, we've got like a North Star for people. So that when they're getting knocked around internally or from others externally or in a business or in a family or in whatever setting, that they have a place that they can return to that feels like home, that holds that sense of peacefulness that we've been talking about. That's the first thing that I say I think is very, very important, because growth happens in relationship to one's highest self, one's highest aspiration and best intentions, right? Like that's the container that holds one to be able to move and grow in the way that you're talking about. The other thing that we do in the coming to peace process is that we actually talk about the principles of the process, whether we're working internally or we're working, with a group at work where there's a conflict. I will talk about the principles so that we're really clear what's the container of this process for conflict resolution. We talk about holding equality, right? So there's nobody has more power than anybody else in this process. Each person's experience is considered to be equal in value to the experience of every other person in the group. It's stated that we expect for every person in the group to hold mutual respect so that each person is encouraged to strive to not interrupt others, to listen with respect, and to know that no one person's agenda is any more important than anybody else's agenda, because the only way we get to a real, true peaceful situation is where everyone's needs are taken into account, right? We understand that we are all actually interdependent, and therefore our common mutual good, is prioritized in order to come to this place of peace. The other principles that we talk about are using honesty, holding compassion for all others in the group, right? Holding patience and tolerance so that, if somebody else has a chance to speak in an actual coming to peace circle, we usually would pass, a talking stick or some kind of object that meant if I have the stick, I'm the person talking, and there's no crosstalk otherwise, because it's interrupting and considered disrespectful. So, and we're looking at, and we ask for people to make a commitment to taking personal responsibility for how they have contributed to the conflict, right? To really look honestly at, what is my experience? How can I state my experience clearly and honestly? Staying willing to engage, even if I disagree with somebody else, and being willing to look internally and saying, wow, I didn't, be willing to say, I did something out of anger, for example, because we've been talking about anger, that was harmful, and I shouldn't have done that. Or to be able to say, wow, I'm hearing and understanding for the first time that I was doing something that caused a problem for somebody else, and I didn't understand that. Right? It's another way that taking personal responsibility might look. So between the process of staying connected internally to this inner experience of higher self, we could say, and then setting a container for these are the rules, guys. This is how we're going to do this. Right? We're working with an individual. I will say just a little bit in the meditation as we move in to work with a couple parts of the self about these principles, right? That the goal of this process is to come to a peaceful solution where all parts needs are met, or all, in a group that everyone's needs are met.
Perfect. And I love taking notes sometimes, like when I'm speaking with people, because sometimes you talk to someone who's just, they have so much wisdom. It's so interesting to hear different points and different views and different lingo, because I have found, from interviewing so many coaches at this point, where the terminology I use, it might be a little bit different, but I love to have different terminology used because it helps the mind be tugged and pulled in a way where it can expand and grow. And that is so interesting. So I was just taking so many notes, and I just wanted to let you know that, because the conversation we have is just the beginning. This right here is going to be an opportunity for so many people to learn more about your work, to learn about how you can help them reach their highest good, their highest self. And that is where we are, where people might feel stuck, they might feel lost, they might feel like they are at war, they're not at peace. But yet today can be an opportunity for them to step into an opportunity to reach out to you, to figure out what is maybe that hiccup or the obstacle where they got, or the moment, as you said, they got hijacked. That right there is going to be so powerful for them. As we begin to wrap up, I would love to get some final words from you, and then for you to tell the audience where they can find you.
I guess the thing that I would love to do is just to instill hope for people, and to know that solutions are available, that there are ways to work with the angst and agita and stress and worry that people are so, that's running so rampant in our society today. So that's the good news, is that help is available. If people are interested in learning more about the Coming to Peace process, or interested in some coaching to help understand, what's happening for them internally, and if there is inner conflict that might be a part of what's happening for them, happy to talk to people about that. I teach a class on the Coming to Peace methodology through the foundation of the Sacred Stream, sacredstream.org. And my coaching practice is out of an organization called Leadership Landing. I'm a co-founder of that organization, which is a coaching and an executive coaching and business consulting firm. And, we work all over the world and all over the country, and, happy to be helpful to people in any capacity they can, whether someone is struggling in a business setting or in their individual world, or both.
Perfect. And I'll make it easy for everyone. All the links are going to be in the description box below so people can easily find you. and learn more about the work that you're doing, because at some point we do have to commit to our personal responsibility. And if we have been relinquishing that for too long, it is time for us to take action today. I want to thank you so much, Joanna, for coming on, spending some time, and talking about your work. All right, everyone, I'd like to thank you so much for watching that interview with my guest, Joanna Adler. What went on in that interview is we talked about many aspects of coaching, and it seemed like, just from doing it, like we were all over the place. But it was still so serene to speak with her, because it was one where we were being truthful to the journey. Because sometimes the mind can be like that. It can bounce from wall to wall, and before we know it, we are finding ourselves at the right moment or the right spot. We have positioned ourselves in a way where we can start to see all the areas around the room. The way I like to think of it as if you have a map that has not been charted and you spend a whole day surveying the map. Now you know exactly where everything is. So you get to find the best location. Maybe you're on a desert island, right? You got stranded on a desert island. You say, I'm going to spend an hour trying to figure out as much of the island as I can. Go to set markers just so I don't get lost if you're not really good with that. And then you figure out the best places to maybe set up camp. Now you might say, as soon as you land on the desert island, the first thing you are going to do is like, I have to set up camp. But yet, there can be a position where you're going to have clean water, or water is going to be more readily available. Maybe you can find some nice coconut trees for some shade because you don't want to be in the sun all day. This can be the best vantage point for you, the best place for you to start. Because sometimes a person can start and then a person is going to say, well, I already did this much, let me just keep on going. Yet it's not the best for them. Because if you just kind of build your survival shelter on the beach, maybe one day is high tide. Maybe one day you're going to be getting bit by all the sand bugs and the mosquitoes. Probably not the best spot. Yet we learn that if this is not the best spot, what is the best spot? We begin to look at our life in a very similar manner. We look at the areas where we have gone down a path and we have said, well, I have gone so far. What's the point of me turning around? But yet it's not so much about turning around. It's about doing a pivot. It's about changing your game plan. It's about giving yourself a knowingness that what you're doing right now might not be exactly going to bring about your survival. And if we didn't even want to use a word as big as survival, our peace. Because if we're uncomfortable in some manner, the people around us are going to feel the same. Just because we lie to others and we put a fake smile on, it doesn't necessarily mean that people can't read you like a book. We all exude energy. We all emit that energy. And if we are not going to be our true self, that energy is going to suffer. And we talked about meditation. Meditation is a great tool. And I have spoken with so many people. Joanna has a very similar style to one of the coaches that I have interviewed, that I've had on a group episode. And the flow of conversation is just so interesting because it was the same exact thing where they begin to open up. Sometimes I know guests can feel maybe a little bit nervous because it's new. Maybe I'm a new guy. They don't know who I am. It can be a bit daunting. And it's so funny because sometimes I talk to people after and they say, oh, I was a little nervous. And I always think like, you don't have to be nervous with me. This is an opportunity for us to learn together and for the audience, you, to listen in and to gain some wisdom. And as I said toward the end of the interview, I took a whole thing of notes, a whole page of notes. And it was just because sometimes you speak with people, and I even said this in the interview, it's so interesting because just because they do it this way and you do it this way, it doesn't necessarily mean that either of you are wrong. There is always multiple ways to approach a situation. Think of a hostage situation, right? Where, we use anger a lot today. A situation like that can be filled with anger. It can be filled with fear. In that situation, the negotiator can say, listen, buddy, you can do whatever you want to the hostages. We're going to come in and we're going to get you. Okay, that's one way to approach it. But then there's another way to approach it. hey, what's going on? Tell me what's going on, right? Let's figure this out together. All right. So now we have two different versions. One is going to lead to maybe a more peaceful, and one might be a little bit more hostile. The path is going to be the same. Whatever you're doing is going to be stopped. And I know it's a far turnaround from the conversation we had today, but it's all connected in the sense of what is peace. Because peace, as we started the interview with, is going to be something that we get to decide. What is peace for us? I was on social media the other day and I saw a picture of a father, and then I saw a video right after it of a father, and he said, the reason why I go to work for 55 hours, or the reason why I go to work all day, is when I come home, all the kids and the family, everyone's happy. And that is what they do. That was their purpose. That was their peace. Yet work can be so hectic. Work can be so stressful. It can be full of moments where you're like, I just want to give up. But we give ourselves more meaning. We commit to our personal development. We commit to our responsibility. We say, how can I reach my highest good? And typically the people that we love are going to help us. They're going to help us reach that good a lot sooner. But yet, if we are so focused on a mission or on a purpose that is not going to bring about fulfillment at some point, or we have learned that the things like money are tools for a cause, but yet not for happiness, then you might say, it doesn't matter how much money I make, but I'm still going to keep on doing it because I'm giving myself a purpose. And all of this is to say, we get to make a choice. Somewhere in your life, maybe you did something that wasn't appropriate to your true character. And now you feel lost. You feel disconnected. You feel detached. But we can bring those feelings back. Peace can mean we understand what we have done. We have come to the realization that the path that we have walked on might not have been perfect. And we're okay with that. Because the path that we will walk on is going to be more pronounced. It's going to be better. It's going to be more full of enjoyment. It's going to be more full of prosperity and positivity in our mind and in our life. This can be our peace. This can be our fulfillment. But in order to come to that, we have to look inside. When you look inside, it can get pretty rough. It can be very messy. And that is where you want a coach. That is where you want someone like Joanna in your corner to help you with that process, especially through guided meditation, helping you understand that the journey that you're on is not finished. Don't feel stuck in your ways. Don't feel trapped in who you are or what you have become. You can make that change today. If you're someone who's suffering from stress, anxiety, lack of confidence, you can name it. There are so many negative feelings that are going to be taking you away from your peace. And we need to step toward that peace more readily. I encourage everyone, all the links are going to be in the description box below. Reach out to Joanna. Of course, we are always here to support you here at Reven Concepts, revenconcepts.com. More than happy to speak with you about what's going on in your life. And there's always going to be people that are there to support you, there to help nurture your growth, and then help you get the mindset to finally become the person you were destined to be. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, email me coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I'll see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone take care.